Well, Governor Scott Walker has found a way to jam through his restrictions on collective bargaining in Wisconsin, and now only wages and benefits can be collectively bargained. It's important to focus not on what can be, but what can't be. The whole impetus for these changes is education reform. It's that without these changes, collective bargaining and the union agreements regulate teacher tenure. If there are layoffs, they require you to lay off the most junior faculty members without any reference to merit. They prohibit merit pay, and you have to pay just based on seniority. I think you should be able to pay good teachers $100,000 a year, and you should be able to fire bad teachers. A good example of how these abuses multiply is in New York City. We have 80,000 school teachers in New York, and 4,000 of them are so incompetent, so physically, sexually, or verbally abusive that the chancellor does not permit them into the classroom to be exposed to students. But because of the contract, we have to pay them full salary and full benefits. We can't fire them, and it costs New York City $100 million a year. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that when Bloomberg, the mayor of New York, has to lay off 4,000 teachers, he begged the union to let him lay off those 4,000 and keep the new, young, enthusiastic, creative teachers who he's just hired. And the union said no, and Governor Cuomo said yes, but then he went to the state legislature, and the Democrats there said no. So it's to end abuses like this that Walker acted. Now, what's going to happen in the future? Probably those state senators will never return. Probably there will not be an additional legislative session with this legislature. Instead, all the Democrats are going to file recall petitions on all the Republicans, and the Republicans will file it on the Democrats, and Walker will be the object of a recall petition too. And then sometime between July and October, depending on how long it takes to get the signatures, there'll be one big, essentially statewide referendum in Wisconsin on these changes. The change I just spoke about and 3 or 4 others. One would require that unions themselves collect the dues from members rather than have them automatically deducted, which I think is an elemental right of a person not to pay the dues if they don't want to. Another element is to give parents the choice as to where to send their children. Another element is to make sure that the union workers pay something approaching what the private sector does for health insurance and pensions. The average pension payment in the private sector is 8%. He wants to raise it up to 6%. The average health insurance payment is 24%. He wants to raise it up to 12%. So these are not onerous requirements. Now, if the recall effort against the Republicans succeeds in Wisconsin, you are never going to get these reforms in any other state in America. The governors are going to be paralyzed, and we will essentially have turned the school system over to the labor unions, which I think is a betrayal of our children and really of our future. On the other hand, if we win in Wisconsin, defeat the recall, and recall some of those AWOL Democrats, then I think the future is very bright for these kind of changes all the way across the country. Now, a lot of the political observers insist on spinning this within the context of the Democrat versus Republican fight and how this will disempower the financial base of the Democratic Party. But that's not the important part. The important part is that unless you achieve these changes, you will never achieve good public education in the U.S. Thanks for listening.